Several months ago, I ended up finding a F100 on Craigslist at a very good price. I only paid about $100 a quarter for it. And I got to thinking, now I'm going to pull these up a little bit because I can't tell exactly where this is coming in on the frame. But this is the F100 right here. And it is a contemporary of a digital camera called the D200, which at the time was considered a pretty good camera. And I got to thinking, I wonder how these two cameras would compare in their capability of getting good images. At that time, digital was pretty well taking over, though there were still some hardcores that thought film was better. And we are dealing with 35 millimeters, so it's not going to be able to do what a 2 1/4 camera can. But anyway, I decided to shoot Ektar 100 film in the F100 camera. And the F100 camera with the 35 millimeter is roughly 14 megabits per frame of film, where the digital camera, the D200, is only 10. So you actually have a little more to work with there, but again, you're dealing with your scanners and how good they are. I'm using an Epson scanner. It's a 550, and it's been around a while, but I find it does a fairly good job at scanning, and we will see later on how well it did. Now, what I would like to point out is just these are both Nikon cameras, but look how similar they are. You can tell they're basically the same vintage, and 2007 was the last year they made the F100. And if, of course, you look at the back of the camera, you're going to see, let me get this up a little higher here. You can see that this has an LED on it, so you know it's a digital camera, whereas when you get to the F100, well, obviously you don't have that. But in any respect, I was quite excited to see how they would do. So I'm going to go out and take some pictures, and it might be a while before I get them back because I don't shoot 35 millimeter every day, especially with film. The digital camera, of course, is one I no longer use, but I did use it for doing weddings back in the good old days when I was still running a studio. So anyway, we'll go ahead and take a look at what we got for results when we're done with scanning and so on. Well, I finally finished that roll of Ektar 100 that I put in the F100 camera. It took me about 3 months. Anyway, the film processed very well and scanned very well. We're going to go ahead and just take a look at the image files as they're enlarged to 100%. Just to give you an idea. So let's just close out a couple of these other images that are in here right now. Okay, so on our right here, or excuse me, on the top here, we're looking at film. And if I do a view at 100%, okay, you could look at that truck only because we've got a truck in here too at a little different location. That was a little bit of a job trying to being able to take two pictures at fairly close to the same time with two different cameras. This is done with the D200, and you can see it's taken from a raw file first of all, and you can see it's got good saturation. It's relatively sharp. If you look at the other one, we're dealing with a different lens for one thing I need to point out. So the zooms might be a little tighter with one lens than the other. And on the film camera, where we're using the Tamron 28 to 300. And that camera was not, or that lens is not the sharpest lens in the world. I used to use it for doing portrait work years ago. It worked well for that. But anyway, we go into the other one, we're dealing with a lens. It's a Nikon lens, it's a kit lens, but it's an 18 to 70, and it is a sharper lens. So that's one thing that could throw this off a little bit. But if we start doing some comparison after we clean these files up, you'd be surprised what we're going to come into. So anyway, that gives you an example a little bit with those two. I'm just going to open up another image file here just to get another comparison. So on our right, we're dealing with film, and on our left, we're dealing with digital. And you can see there's a difference here, again, on saturation primarily. In fact, the saturation in some cases tended to go a little bit in one color, direction. So as far as the accuracy and color, I felt the film had very good accuracy, and we were doing a scan that gave us 4800 DPI. So we ended up with two files here that were done. One was about the D200 has roughly a 10 megabyte file, and the film, which is 35 millimeter, the frame itself is roughly 14 megapixels. So we're comparing something in a similar range, but you can tell film actually is a little bit more capability when we compare these two different cameras. So anyway, we close that out. We're going to go ahead and check into something else here in a bit, but I'm going to just cut for a second. So when I was down at one of the local lakes, we happened to run across some geese with their young'uns. Just open this up. I wasn't really expecting this. It kind of was driving along and saw them, and I didn't adjust my shutter speeds very well, and I may have been running a little slow shutter speed, especially on the digital camera, which appeared to be a little soft, and I think it was from motion. We're looking at the two different files here. Right now, this image that I've got open is a film shot, and I might point out that I am shooting on the film camera. I am shooting a Tamron 28-300, and this is a little zoomed out, and as a result, the image isn't real sharp, and that tends to be a problem with that particular camera. But I didn't have enough lenses, or that particular lens, I didn't have enough lenses that would match perfectly, so I had to do the best I could. When I was dealing with this camera, which is a D200, I had a 18-70 Nikon lens on, and it did appear a little sharper, but on the other hand, we weren't zooming out as far, so it's a little hard to compare. So the zooms were different on these. But anyway, we'll open up the first one just to go through that, and go ahead and look at it at 100%. And you will see that it is pretty blurry. This, by the way, still printed pretty well if you didn't go real large. Not too much you could do to sharpen it up a lot, because these birds were moving. And like I said, my mistake was probably shooting at a shutter speed that was a little slow for what I had in mind. I was mostly just taking pictures of things that didn't move. So you look at that, and you go over here and you look at the one done with the digital camera, and you can see that there definitely, again, more saturation. Appears to be sharper. Part of that could be the capture mode, and again, when I'm doing the scanning, I didn't do any additional sharpening. Also, I didn't do anything extra to improve the saturation during the scan on the film. So anyway, there's a couple of comparisons, and then we're going to go on and looking at some that have actually been adjusted to look alike, and I'm just going to go ahead and transfer over to that in just a bit. So there are variables that we're dealing with here, but if we take these files and modify them so they look as close as they can to each other, you'd be surprised that both the digital and the film files actually stand up pretty good alongside each other. So we'll just open up a couple of them here and take a look at them. What I did, went in and did everything from change the sharpening on the film, and the saturation, I tried to kind of match the saturation a little closer. So these two files, the one on the right is film, the one on the left is digital, and you can see they look a lot alike. Again, we're dealing with two different lenses, and that is having a little effect on, for example, how sharp the background and so on is, because the Tamron lens has a longer focal length. But in general, these two files, they'll print pretty well up to an 8x10. You wouldn't be able to tell much the difference between the two. We'll just close that one out, take a look at the other one. Here's one that I could tell a little difference, and it's in the color of the trees. They're budding, and there's some purple flowering in those buds, and you can see that it shows up better on the right, which is film. and then on the left. And I don't really know exactly why, but it seemed like the film did a little bit better in giving me the actual color. I know that the digital camera was adding green. I had to take some green out of most of my files and cut back the saturation a little bit. But in general, both these prints would print well, although I did like the film one better in this particular situation. We'll go back in here and just pick up a couple of vertical ones. I think I'm getting more than I want here. I must have had to get rid of a couple of these. Okay. So put these two alongside each other. You can tell there's just a slight difference in the focal length again, but boy, these two files look very, very close. And on the right, we're dealing with film. On the left, we're dealing with the digital file. Again, at that particular focal length, the sharpness was pretty good on the Tamron lens, which is a little bit soft, like I said earlier. So we'll close that out, but you get an idea. They look pretty similar and they print pretty similar. And we have a couple more here that I could see. Again, on the right, we're doing film. On the left, we're doing digital. I actually liked the film one better, and I think it was more accurate in color. So, like I said, the digital files, the D200 was pushing things a little bit too far on the green side, which of course could be adjusted later. But anyway, I was again surprised at how close those could be made to look like each other. And we'll just put up a couple more here. We'll pull up these geese. These are not going to be identical with the geese, but so on the right we're doing film, and I'm going to try to get these so we can see the little ones. The right, you see the film. On the left, you see the digital. And if you look at them at the size that we're looking at them, they both look very, very similar. Again, the saturation on the left is a little greater, and I might point out too that the shutter speed that I was picking for the film might have been a little slow, and I could have been getting a little softer because of that. And since we're dealing with them moving, and I know these little ones were moving. So anyway, I had to grab this quick because they were there and then they were gone. Anyway, I thought they'd look similar, and here we got another one where frankly you really can hardly tell the difference between the film and the digital. Now, you are going to get some grain on film, and of course you have to clean up any of the dust spots and so on, but in general there's just the response of the film and the digital camera was very similar once we got everything, all the colors and stuff straightened out.